Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna get started now. If you go in resources under files, there's a new folder called discussions, and like there's only one file in it, so you can open that up. And we're gonna be working through that file today. So does anyone have trouble opening that up, or is everyone? Okay. Okay, cool. So last lecture, we talked about data types and functions. So does anyone remember what a data type is? Anyone echo it? Yeah,
It's different types of ways your computer stores data, like their an integer value or a string.
exactly. Yeah, good. And what are functions? We have them. Okay, functions are just, you take an input and you make the function do something and it returns something. It's just like a way to kind of automate things in Python, if you have a better definition for functions.
Yeah, it's a way to bundle your code under like a name. So that if you're doing something over and over and over again, you don't have to write like, and I've written some functions that are like 50 lines of code. So it's like, oh, I just have a name for it instead of writing the same 50 lines over and over and over again.
Cool. So we're gonna start by today's discussion by opening up your terminal and then typing in Python 3 if you're like Windows, and I think just Pi if you're Mac. I don't really know. Like just open up Python in your terminal, and I'll come around and help. I think you have to do Python. Sorry. Did it work? I have to wait. Okay, I'll go around and raise your hand if you're having trouble with Python. So everyone has Python on the screen? Okay, cool. So the first thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna define a variable. Variable one as surprise Pikachu is the best meme with quotation marks. So I just want you guys to type that out. You can type something shorter, or you can literally copy this from the file, like Control C and then tap your keyboard like this and paste it. And hit enter once you type that out. So while you guys are doing that, can anyone tell me what kind of data type variable one would be? What kind of data type stores words? Louder? Sure, yeah. So to confirm that, what you can do is that you can, everyone should have variable one equals blah, blah, blah. And then in the next kind of option, you can write TYPE, and then in parentheses, write variable one. And then hit enter, and then it should say something like str, class str. If this is hard to follow along, just let me know, like I can just open it up over here. Oh, we can also do that, yeah. Is there anyone with any able to check the type of variable one? Okay, cool. Any questions so far? Don't hesitate to ask. Yeah? Yeah, you can use whatever name, it doesn't matter. Cool, so I want you guys to do that from 2 to 8. I'll give you guys like maybe until 2 more minutes. And I want everyone to kind of understand what each variable, what each data type for variable 2 through 8. And you can like work with the people around you. And feel free to raise your hand and ask me questions. So until another 2 minutes to just work on that. Yeah. So you can just type it in. Okay, cool. Can anyone tell me what data type variable 2 is? And you're going to say it all together. Integer, yeah. Does that make sense? Integers? Can anyone tell me what variable 3 is? Float. So what makes a float and an integer different? Does anyone want to?
Integers are whole numbers, floats are decimals.
So for example, if you guys make like another variable called 5.0, what do you think the data type would be for 5.0? Yeah, you can check it to make sure. But integers are just like when you want to store whole numbers, and floats are when you want to store decimals. And that's really helpful because like it's like infinitely small, but like if you, because like the way that floats are stored requires more space, so if you're using more integers in your code or something, the code would basically run faster, but it's like a super small thing. Cool. Did anyone tell me what variable 6? Yes, a list. What is a list? A list. Okay, so I guess a better question is what's variable 7? Yes, a tuple. What makes a list and a tuple different? Yes, so another thing about like the way data is stored, like I said, lists, you can manipulate the stuff inside of it. Tuples are forever, like it can stay like that forever. And because of that, whenever you make lists in your code, it takes like a little bit more storage on like, so it takes a little bit longer to run things with lists. Yeah.
If you were to put words in your list, for example, would you have to put quotation marks around them?
Yes. So you can store anything. You can store floats, ints, strings. You can try making a list with, like, yeah.
And the things inside the list or the tuple are considered strings or floats or integers.
Yeah, yeah. That's correct. What's like the main difference we can determine between lists and tuples? Like, how can we look at it and say this is a tuple or this is a? Yeah, the right. It's good. Cool. Can anyone tell me what type of variable 8? I didn't say variable 8. Dictionary. Yes. Does anyone remember what a dictionary is? Yes, even that. So I'm not sure what example was covered in the last lecture, but you can basically have keys and values and you can access Ford by using the brand. Like you can access the brand keys to access the Ford variables. Does anybody have questions on any of these data? Yeah.
Can you manipulate what's inside the dictionary?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way.
Okay.
I don't know the syntax off the top of my head, but you can probably Google it.
You can change the I do not believe you can change the keys. So if you have a dictionary, you can set brand to whatever quantity you want, but you can't change the fact that brand is one of your keys. Does that make sense? So the first element is a key, so that's basically like the spot in a list, except for it's assigned a word. And then the second is the value. So the values, I believe, can be changed, but the keys cannot. And also, 1, 2.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions? Those are really good questions.
I do want to jump back to your comment about whether or not you have to put parentheses around words in a list. So here is what happens when you put parentheses as a string, and my other list is just putting in the variables, except for hopefully I spelled them correctly. Yeah, I did. And so as you can see, if I put it in strings, it outputs in strings, but if I put variable names, then it puts what my variables were, which was like the string surprise Pikachu is the best meme and the number 5. So hopefully that makes sense.
Everyone feel good about this? Okay. Okay, cool. Can you go back? Okay, cool. So now we're gonna talk about functions. So this is an example of a function where you have your define statement. And then you have the name of the function, which in this case is G. And then in parentheses is gonna be the input. This function does not take any input, so there's nothing inside the parentheses. And then basically whatever is gonna happen inside this function goes one indent over, and don't forget the colon whenever you write a function. So, I want you guys to kind of write this in your terminal and kind of like mess around with it for maybe another 2 minutes. And if you have questions about how to do this, I'm gonna walk around. You can just raise your hand.
Wait.
So yeah, just like write this function and then run this code and then see what happens. So you need to go back into the items if you want
No. There I want. Yeah, so this is what it wants in education.
Python is really annoying about syntax, so make sure you have all your indents and everything.
Give me like the double. Yeah, it's just, so. You have your design statement and then you wanna hit tab. Yeah, okay, then I would input this and press enter and then do this again. Is return true a function or is it should I
Yeah, so
That's a great question. I'm gonna answer that first. Okay.
So just to kind of explain functions, sometimes functions spit things out. And if you want to spit something out from a function, you use return true. So like whenever you call G, parentheses, it will return true. So that it's just kind of like the next time you call that function, it's literally going to return true. That's what return true is. And we'll discover more, we'll like discover this syntax a little bit beyond. Any other questions?
No. After we do the yeah, so you actually, they just want you to define function here and then you hit enter. And now you're doing, now it won't be. Okay. We just have to.
Try to go. What do you do?
Again, sorry guys, another thing is like, when you guys define the function, make it like in its own line thing, and then you get like 3 dots. And then after return true, hit enter twice, and then do the variable part that we use.
If we do that, can we do it again? Make the whole thing again?
Yeah, you just have to define.
Alright, cool.
You might wanna, you have to write the entire function.
Print.
And then return true, and then you get the phrase after that. And then now you have.
Yeah, it's because you were, when it has the 3 dots, you're writing it
Yeah,
down.
now you can do the next line very. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really confusing. It's hard to- Yeah, okay. That's. I'm gonna, can we switch laptops so I can do it on the camera?
Okay, sure.
I didn't really.
That means you'll have to,
Active one.
What did I do?
Okay.
so my terminal is weird. No, I.
It's okay, I don't really care.
I can.
Other people want to.
Oh, really?
Actually, you can join, what you can do is you can join the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you join the Zoom. And then we'll stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
For everyone on Zoom, we're gonna switch over to Maham's computer, so. Stop the share. You should speak.
I'll share my screen. I need to. Can you give me a question for sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Some technical difficulties. Okay, so everyone should be on their terminal. I'm gonna open it. Okay, cool. So why do I hear my, can you mute yourself? Okay, cool. So we're defining a function called g, and then you get these 3 dots. We want to hit tab and then print, I think it's like beep, 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 beep. Can everyone see? Okay, this is so small. I'm sorry. Can everyone see okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you hit tab again, and then we return true, which again, it would just like, it's just gonna return true every time G is called. And hit enter, and now you're gonna get this other 3 dots. We're just gonna hit enter again and go back into like that little caret, the sideway carets. And then I can call G, and it's gonna print beep beep and return true. Does that make sense? Yeah?
What is the return true?
I'll explain that in just a second. So, whenever you call functions, so like let's set a variable. I'm just gonna call it variable 1, or yeah, I'm gonna call it variable 1. And I'm gonna set it equal to G with the parentheses. So this is kind of confusing because print statements is another function inside the function, and the whole job of a print statement is just to like print things. So every time you have G with parentheses
remotely like anywhere, it's just gonna print beep beep, which is really confusing. But it just goes to show like that's how functions work. But as for the return true, now when v1 took the true, the return true that we did, it took it from g of parentheses, and stored it into v1. So now when I print v1, it's just gonna return true. Does that make sense?
Why doesn't it also without beep?
Because when I did g parentheses, I just stored the return statement in the variable. I did not store the print statement.
Here, we can go through it like line by. So when we say v1 is equal to g with parentheses, this means I'm calling g. So I'm going to jump into my function b and do everything here. So v1 will go here, print v, and then return true. This means this is going to turn, when the return statement turns whatever this is into the value. Kind of, but if that makes sense. So it basically is like, okay, v1 is g, okay, print v, and now say v1 is true. So v1 is now just true.
Okay,
You see,
I'm so confused.
so
but
when we
okay.
do this, it has to print the v because that's associated with this, and v1 becomes true, and that's the end. And then now v1 is just true now.
Okay,
So when we call v1 again, we get true.
Yeah, think of like the print statement and the return statement as doing two different things right now. Print statement, every time you call g, a parentheses, it's just gonna give me beep beep. But the truth, like right now, for example, in this line, I didn't store the true anywhere, so it just spit out the true too. But in v1, I stored the true inside somewhere, and then now I can, it's like that the value that the function returns is stored in that variable. Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing, but that's the whole point. Yeah.
At least in IPython, if you ever have just something that has a value, it'll list the value after. So it doesn't do it after variable assignment, I think.
Because I stored the
But if you
value.
just have a value,
Yeah.
it'll just print the value. So in like, if you were to do if here you would just write type and then something, it like here it just evaluates this and then prints whatever the value of this is. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Kind of what's going on?
If you had a Python file and you were running in the terminal, you would have to do print this.
Mhm.
If you ran this in a Python file, you'd get an output that just says B. And so we work about it.
Any other questions? It's kind of confusing, but don't worry. This is like a really confusing example. Functions aren't actually this bad. So another thing to know is that the type of G, just G, the name G, is that it's a function because we defined G as a function, but G with parentheses is now, it's the whole function as a whole, and the whole function as a whole returns true, which is a Boolean data type, which is why it returns bool. It's the data type of G with parentheses is a Boolean data type.
Here's a better, when you have a function and you have parentheses after it and sometimes inputs, that's saying do the function. So this is saying, oh, I'm taking my function G as an object. That's why it's a function. And this is saying do G with the parentheses. And that's why I get the result, because here I'm taking this, and here I'm doing all of this code and getting.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
in your file here, you have like define a variable for as G. And why did we do that?
Yeah. So what happens when I set a variable equal to just G? What do you guys think is going to happen? When I hit enter? Nothing. Because I just like the whole point of that was just to kind of show you guys that G is just the name. But the thing that actually does something is like when you put an input. And in this case, this function doesn't have any inputs. But right now, when I set v4 to g, it's literally just like another function. Problem? Yeah, Python is really weird. So I just set v4 equal to the identity of g as a function, and I just renamed g. I just made another function that does exactly the same thing as g did with the name v4. So you can do a lot of weird things in Python, but don't get so lost in the details. Just kind of like understand, like you'll see when you practice it more, this is kind of like the flow of things. But the main points from this question was understand what data types are and understand how this function, like the syntax of a function works. So if you have any questions on those two things, ask, or if any other questions, ask that too. But if you're like confused on those two things, then ask that more urgently. Okay. Okay, in that case, feel free to ask me at any point, but I'm going to move on to number 2. Number 2 is about division. I forgot what this I think it's called like floor division and modulo. So what the heck are these things? So I think in the example, I want you guys to, so first run these 3 lines of code, like literally just write 5 divided by 2. And then 5 floor division. Yeah. Oh, the pound sign is just a function. I'm sorry, comment.
So
It's
in
not gonna
Python,
read
yeah,
that.
there is a pound sign, it will ignore all, it will basically ignore all text after a pound sign.
So, does anyone explain what 5 divided by 2 and what 5 floor division of 2 did? Like, what's going on here? Anyone can on Zoom can unmute too if you guys want to talk. But what happens? What's the difference between floor division and regular division? Yes. Yes. So to reiterate, what's your name? To reiterate what Zach said, 5 divided by 2 is just, it's going to give you the exact answer, or depending on what kind of numbers you're dividing, it will return a flow. 5 floor division will return the nearest, the nearest, not the nearest, but like it'll step down. It'll do like if it was 2.5, it's gonna go down to the nearest whole number, which in this case is 2. So even it won't round up. It will just go down 1 integer. Does that make sense? So what do you think is gonna happen when I do 4 divided by 2? Like, is it gonna give me 2, or is it gonna give me 2.0? Actually, I have no idea. I'm gonna find out. But what do you guys think? 2.0 or like 2? 2.0. Because division, just regular division, will always return as a float in Python. But floor division, if you wanted it to really be a whole number, you could do floor division. Feel good? Yeah?
For the floor division, does that, like, does it round to the lowest?
Yes. It rounds to the lowest. It's never gonna go up. So like,
It always truncates that.
yeah, I can't think of any numbers that round up right now, division, but like I guess 2.5 you would expect it to round up, but it rounds down. 5?
3.
Rounds down. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna go on to like modulus. Is it modulus? Modulo. And it's like a percent sign. So what happens when I do 5 mod 2? The remainder. What is the remainder of 5 divided by 2? Oh, I guess I can just press enter. I don't know why I'm asking you guys. But that's cool. It's cool because you look at this and like, this is so stupid. Like, when are we ever going to use this? It's so useful when you're just like going through like massive numbers. You can just like mod everything. But the point of this is that modulo and floor division will always return an integer. It's never going to give you a float. You're never going to get a remainder that's like a decimal, because that's the whole point of it not to happen. Yeah, anything you want to add?
It's been a while to like explore all the details of one. You can do weird things.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, for example, it's kind of cool when you have like a really long number like this and you just want the last number, you can just do mod 10 and it's just going to give you 9. And that's just kind of like how it works. And if you want to get like the first number, I actually forgot. I think you do. Oh yeah, if you want to get everything but the last number. Sorry?
Yeah, you want everything with the last
So that's kind of like mainly what you would use it for in like CS classes. You can use it in other ways too, but this is like, I don't know, that's like the coolest takeaway.
the importance of modulo and floor division, returning integers, is that a lot of times when you have big structures of arrays, the array list index, sorry, they're technically lists. List index are strictly integers. So when you're moving around the list, having functions that return only integers is very helpful. So you can get elements as opposed to
Yes.
like you can get say I have a list, I can get the first thing in the list, I can get the second thing in the list. I can get the like 1.5 in the list. So this is really helpful for moving.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, epiphanies? Okay. Feel free to ask anytime. We're gonna move on to the next question, which is kind of like exploring how we can exploring how we can manipulate lists. So we have word _1, and I'm gonna set it equal to fastest. So does anyone remember how we can index through a list? Like, how can I get the first value or the first letter in fastest? Did we cover indexing? Yeah, go ahead. Yes, 0. So everything in CS, or at least most things, is 0 index. So if you want to get the first letter, you have to go to 0. So in order to do that, you'd use a strategy called indexing. And to index, all you have to do is put like brackets, and then inside the brackets, like oops, I see I didn't put anything inside, but like a number inside. And if I want to get F, I would do the 0th letter, 0th index. Okay. So you can also, so like if you want to get like, I don't know, the 4th letter, you could do index 3. So you can like do that for all the size of but you can't do like 10, because then it's going to give you an error, because the string is not 10 long, 10 indices long. So this question specifically asks us to get the first, or like kind of like make like another word out of it. So we want to get like the first 4 words, or we can also do like the last 4 words. So let's do the first 4 words. So how do we get the first 4 words?
Letters.
Sorry, first 4 letters. We're going to use this. So I'm going to make a comment. In indexing formatting, you're going to have like kind of a start, end, and like how many you want to skip. So if I want to start at the 0th letter, I can write 0. And I want to end at the 4th letter, so I'm going to write 3, because 0 indexing. And I don't want to skip anything. And I'll explain what skipping does. But if I hit enter, okay, my bad. Good point. It's exclusive. So it's not going to include the last. It won't include the 3rd one. So if you want to include the 3rd one, you have to do 4. And you get fast. Does that make sense? So just like this is kind of like the rule of thumb with indexing. If you can just write that down or engrave it in your memory, or you can always Google it. what does skipping do? So always it's going to be an implied 1, but let's do a 2. So it will do every second letter. So it'll do F, skip A, S, skip T, and then it's done. Yeah? Good question. Good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, another cool thing about indices is that you can go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can also go -1, -2, -3, -4. So if I want to get the last letter in fastest, I do -1. If I want to get like the third, the second, fourth last, whatever it is, I can do -3. So now it's like you can go forward and you can also go backwards if you start at -1. So the question becomes, how do I go backwards? So let's say I want to type in fast backwards. I want to start at index 4, or maybe I want to start at index 3 and end at index -1 and then do backwards. Okay, that didn't work.
The start and the stop.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Oh, wait. No, that
Um,
should work, 'cause it still is going forward.
maybe. How do I go backwards? This should just give it backwards. It'll give the whole word backwards. Because if you don't put anything, it'll just go from start will just be the 0th and end will be like the last one. And the -1 is just it going backwards. But if you want to,
Actually, you might have to go, wait, you might have to go -1, 3, -1.
I think that's what I did. Or
Yeah, oh.
I guess
in the direction.
4. There's a lot of cool things you can do with indices, and I'm definitely gonna let you guys explore it more. Okay, I'm going worse, but that's kind of how you that's kind of how you index things. Just this is like your rule of thumb, and then understanding that you can have negative and you can have positive, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then negative. Does that make sense? Does the whole negative thing make sense? Yeah.
You went from -1 to -4. Can you do that?
Yes. If you go last. No, to -4, -1 to -4,
Oops, my bad.
by negative, you have to.
Yeah, -1.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
you
have to skip.
So these indices have to be in the same direction. So this is a start and this is a stop. And this is the direction. The sign of this is the direction. So if you're going forwards, then the start has to be less than the stop. And if you're going backwards, the start has to be greater than the stop. Yeah. See, so here it's saying, you're saying start at the end and go forward to -4. And it just says, oh, there's nothing,
you can't do that.
you can go forwards from like the end of -4.
Okay. How does that feel? Indexing? Confusing, but cool. You can do lots of cool things. I'm gonna revisit word_1 one more time. So we did fast. We can also get test. So to get test, the second T, the first T in fastest is like FAST. It's the third letter or the fourth letter, but it's the third index. And then I want to go to the end. So now I can get test. So like again, if you don't have anything in between, it will just like the default arguments will literally just print the whole thing because it'll do the default is like the very beginning of the word, the very end of the word, and then 1. So you're only going to go like 1 by 1. So you can, that's another way you can, another cool way you can manipulate indexing. Okay. Does anyone, how about, oh, this is, yeah, okay. What I'm gonna let you guys do for the last time of class is you guys can like, last 10 minutes, just gonna be any questions. You guys can try doing 1.3 and 1.4. If you guys want and have time at home, feel free to do questions like the application problems, and definitely look at this kind of like for coding hygiene, just kind of understand how to write good code. So like people don't get confused when you're writing things. But the homework should have plenty of practice, so you don't need to worry about it too much. But just feel free to use the last 10 minutes of class to ask like anything that was kind of like a hiccup. And if you don't have any questions, you're free to leave. I'll keep the Zoom open so you guys can keep talking on here.
Hey Maham, can you announce that Pranathi's OH are gonna be online?
Oh, also, there's gonna be office hours online. Is Brianna gonna be in person?
No, but
Okay, office hours. So you finish that?
no, but if you want to open up 355 for them to have a place to like go on Zoom and talk to Pranathi, then you can.
Okay, cool. So if you want to go to office hours right now, it's on Zoom. If you want a space to do office hours, let me know and I'll take you up to the 3rd floor. And that